You should expect to be loved and seen and heard and joyful, and there's many people out in the world that don't know this. And the families from whom these daughters of destiny come from, this is our final week 4 of this 4-week series on a docu-series from Netflix on Daughters of Destiny. These girls their families don't know this. They don't know that they can expect to be seen and loved and heard. I just finished reading a book by one of the girls that was in the documentary. She graduated from Shanti Bhavan, and she decided to take a year off to write her story. She wanted to be a journalist. And as she started looking at other people's lives, she decided that she had a story of her own to share, and she felt it was important to share it. And so instead of going to college, she was really nervous to tell her parents when she graduated on graduation day. She told them that she was going to take a year off to write her book. And her parents did not understand that. They were embarrassed. They felt disgraced in their village to tell them, the other villagers, that their daughter was not going to go to college like everyone else. They didn't understand. But I just finished this book, and it's a wonderful book. It's very moving. It's her story. It's her life. And it's called The Elephant Chaser's Daughter. Her dad was an elephant chaser. Elephants like to eat the sugar cane, and so the government would hire people, a very dangerous job, to chase the elephants away when they were eating the sugar cane. And Shilpa is the author, Shilpa Raj, the author of this book. Now, she was the one whose parents, if you've been watching the series, her mom wanted her to marry her uncle. She was the one whose sister died when she was 14. And she's the one that wrote this book, and her dad didn't even want her when she was born because she was a girl. He wanted to put her aside, and they did that often with girls, not keep them and let them die. But something inside him didn't do that. And something inside him, spirit inside him, wanted his daughter to go to this school, to have this opportunity, whereas the mom didn't want her to go. And Shilpa writes in her book about this experience. Her parents are arguing over whether she should go to school or not. And she writes in this book, "I think of my new destiny as pre-planned by Mother Fate, and inscribed on my forehead in the indiscernible ink of the gods. But there is no way to read it without the help of a magic mirror or a fortune teller. It holds a mystery that has haunted me all this while. If we cannot know what our destiny is, how are we to fulfill it or escape it? It seems awfully convenient for the gods and equally maddening for the humans." I love that quote because you can feel her uncertainty. You can feel her frustration. Her, why me? Why was I given this opportunity? Why was I so blessed to not continue in this life, this cycle of poverty as my parents? There's a belief in India and several other cultures that a deity comes and writes the destiny of a newborn on its forehead. It's 6 days after the baby is born. And it writes its destiny on its forehead. Some will even go some parents will stay up all night trying to catch the deity in the act, and even leave a writing utensil right by the baby to make sure that it's a good destiny, that it's one of abundance, that it's one of prosperity and blessings. And so often, that's not what these people who are in this lowest caste, the untouchables, experience. But fate is a way for these cultures to explain why bad things happen. It was fate. It was written on the forehead. It was meant to be this way. And its fate is something that they believe is something we cannot escape. It's also, I read in another article that the lines on the forehead are like reading someone's character. Just like you would read the fortune on a palm. You can read the character of one. I don't know what that means for people who wear bangs. That's probably a whole nother discussion. But this writing on the forehead is also in the Bible. We find it in the book of Revelation, chapter 7. Revelation is a lot of chaos going on, a lot of destruction going on, and every once in a while we have a breather from it, we have a break from it. And in chapter 7 is where there's this break from the chaos. And there's 4 angels controlling the 4 directions of the wind, because the winds can destroy the land and the sea and the trees. And so they're holding the winds back so nothing gets destroyed. They're letting us breathe for a moment. And a 5th angel appears and says not to unleash the winds to destroy the earth and the sea and the trees until the servants of God are marked, have been given a mark on their forehead. Now, Ed Townley was a Unity minister who wrote Kingdom Come, and he wrote the whole metaphysical interpretation of the book of Revelation, and it's just fascinating. And he says that the forehead is the location of the pineal gland, and it metaphysically represents the 3rd eye of spiritual awareness. Those who are awake to their spiritual identity will be able to recognize that the spiritual dimension underneath all of life. Problems often seem huge to us, right? We don't even really put them in perspective. There's a picture I want you to see of this, how our problems, when we're just us, see how small we are? See how tall the trees are? We can feel like our problems are as tall as the trees, bigger than we are. This is taken in Hawaii, by the way, on the island of Kauai. It doesn't mean that we don't experience the storms. We do experience the storms. It only means that we won't be lost and confused by them. We will understand that this is just spirit at work, that this is part of the human experience. And when we come to that, knowing that realization, then we know that there is always beauty in everything, and there's a picture of a rainbow in Kauai. This is on the Nepali coast. Maybe you know I just got back from there. Anyway, the rainbows in life, seeing the beauty. So in Unity, we teach that fate, there is no predetermination. There's no power outside of us controlling our lives. That we have the power within us. That we are creators of our own lives. Myrtle Fillmore says this in How to Let God Help You. From the beginning, all of the qualities and capabilities you need in order to make for yourself a perfect destiny have been implanted in you. We have everything we need. Everything we need to live a life that is free, that is joyful, that is peaceful, that is loving. And yet, many times we don't know it. We don't realize our own potential. But I love that she says it's like implanted in us. We just watched a movie in Kauai one evening. Vicki Larson, who's sitting back here, recommended it to us, and we watched it together, and it's called Soul. Anybody seen it? It's a Disney movie by Pixar, and it was so cute, and I love how the new souls are given a personality. They're on a little bus or tram or something, and there's all these new souls hopping around, and they're just these cute little round blue things. And they're like, okay, you 5, you're going to be aloof. And you 5, you're going to be, I don't know what, just snarky maybe and cynical. But that's how they explain how we've been given personalities. This genetic big debate over nature versus nurture, and this is the nature part, that we are born with this. Of course, this is the writer's interpretation of how things happen, right? So this story is about a soul, Joe Gardner, who is he thinks his life is meaningless until he has this big break. He's a jazz musician. And so he doesn't see all the good things that are going on in his life. He only thinks his life is meaningless until his big break. And I'm not going to say much more than that because I want you to watch it. It talks about predetermination and souls and new souls, and some go up here and some, But it leaves you with a lot more questions than answers. But it also has each of the souls is looking for its spark. And they confuse that with purpose, that a spark is your purpose, but everybody, all the Joe Gardner in particular is looking for this big purpose, this big thing that he's supposed to do. And often we do that too, right, in our lives. We look for this big purpose instead of just enjoying the journey. Instead of just taking a day at a time. We were in Kauai for 2 weeks. And every time, this is the 4th time my husband and I have been to Kauai. And every time we're there, we want to stay longer. Every time we're not ready to go home. And each time we've gone, we've extended it a few days. And every time we say, we're not ready to go home, I say, no, I got to get back to work. I got to get back to my responsibilities. I got to get back. And every time I come home, I'm like, darn, why didn't I just stay? So three other times I said no. This time we decided we had this idea of going to the Big Island because we had never been to the Big Island. And we thought, well, we won't have lessened our time in Kauai because we're already here for 2 weeks. And this was decided last minute. But we could spend a few days on the Big Island. And so I'm weighing this in my head. And it's not an easy decision. I feel like I have 2 opposing forces within me. The one that's longing to do this, to stay, to go to the Big Island, to experience something different, and the overwhelming responsible part of me that needs to work. And we made the decision to stay a couple days before we were meant to come home. And that night I couldn't sleep. A lot of guilt, a lot of fear that people will judge me, fear that I'll be seen as selfish, fear that I don't deserve this, feeling very guilty. It was challenging to not feel guilty. And I realized when I woke up in the morning that I was really looking for someone's permission and someone's approval to say, it's okay, you can stay. And I realized I didn't need that. It was a process I kind of had to go through, and it was, it feels so, I don't even know the word, as I'm working with Daughters of Destiny and people in extreme poverty, for me to be worrying about staying in Hawaii a few extra days. Like, who am I? And why do I have this life? And why am I deserving of this? It's so easy to think I shouldn't be doing this. But we're not here to play small. We're here to answer the call of our souls. And my soul, loud and clear, was saying, we have this opportunity to see another island, to experience another culture, and they're so different. The islands are so different. Any of you who have been to them, more than one of them know this. And it's so easy to think we shouldn't be doing this, and we got there. We got to the Big Island on Monday, and to go to Hawaii, you have to have a QR code. You have to have had a negative COVID test, which we did. And when we made the reservation to go to Hawaii, the Big Island, we asked several people. Nobody said we needed another one. It was Hawaii. We're still in the state. We're in the U.S. But we got through the line, and the woman said, you're going to have to stay in quarantine for 10 days. You needed to get another COVID test. We're like, we're only here for 3 nights. What are we supposed to do? And after a lot of discussion of going to find a rapid test or something, she said, have you been vaccinated? And we said, yes. And she said, okay, I'll make an exception. Then we get out of the airport, and it's pouring, and we couldn't get a ride for 2 hours. No taxis, no lifts, no Ubers, nothing. And I said to Kevin, I think maybe we were not supposed to come here. This is my guilty conscience talking. But we stayed. But it certainly felt like the road, the path, had caved in. And here's a picture of a crater where a road, you can see the road on the left-hand side of the screen there. This crater, we were in a helicopter, and this just collapsed, the road. It's still steaming. You can't really tell from the picture that well, but this is all still steaming. It's really fascinating. And so I had to step out of my comfort zone. I had to do something that was out of character for me. My character is be responsible. You're the oldest of 6 kids. Be the responsible one. Do the work. And I realized that as people were asking us, do you like Hawaii or Kauai better? You don't have to choose. Kauai to me is like a big hug. Like this, it's close, and it's small, and you just feel hugged when you're there. And Hawaii, the Big Island, is expansive and big and spacious. And you don't have to choose which one you like better. They're both great. This Big Island is like us. It's like our consciousness. It holds many things at the same time. It's new. It's eruptive. It can erupt. It can be shook up. There are many earthquakes there. It's lush on one side. It's dry on the other side. It's rocky. It's smooth. It's valleys and mountains, and you can hold all of that at the same time. It has 11 of 13 ecosystems on one island. It's still growing, it's still changing, and there's a new island being formed off the southeast coast. It's just fascinating to me this land that we were standing on is like that. And I realize as I'm looking at these opposites on this same island that I didn't have to choose between being responsible and following the longing of my soul. I could do both. I could work from Hawaii, which is what I did. And COVID, if nothing else, has taught us that we can do both. We can have both. We can work from home, or we can work from an island. And these girls who are in Daughters of Destiny, they're living in two different worlds, and they have to hold both. They have to hold this wonderful opportunity that they've been given for an education. And then they have to hold where they come from, their families, and the extreme poverty. Not an easy thing to hold both of those. But they realize, like in the movie Soul, that there's a spark of joy. There's these sparks of life that help make life joyful. And I realized that as I was staying in Hawaii a few extra days, experiencing a new island, that this was a spark for me. That I was following a slightly different path. And here's the path. It's lined with palm trees. It doesn't have to be the same path we've always taken. These girls and Daughters of Destiny are on a different path than their families. I believe we come here to learn and experience. We come into this body to learn and experience something. And maybe we don't know what that is. Maybe that's what's written on our foreheads, what we came here to learn and experience, but there's multiple ways that we can do that. It doesn't have to be one path. There can be many paths. It doesn't mean your life is meaningless if you don't express it either. Like our character Joe Gardner in the movie Soul thought his life was meaningless. But maybe if you do express it, maybe if you do take that other path, that you'll see new opportunities that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Like these girls in the movie. Or maybe you'll feel more alive. Or maybe you'll be inspired to help others. That's the hope of the founders of Shanti Bhavan. That these children, all of them, boys and girls, will help many others and touch other lives and end the cycle of poverty. So the movie Soul leaves us with many questions. Many questions. And isn't that like life? We have many questions, and maybe we're not here to answer those questions. Like, what meaning are you giving to your life? Is your life meaningless? Do you see it as meaningless? Or are you able to shift that focus and see opportunities? What is written on your forehead? What are your sparks? What gives you joy in life? Do more of that. Find that. It doesn't have to be some big purpose. And a question I think a lot of us ask is, am I good enough to be alive? One of the new souls that Joe Gardner in the movie has to mentor is number 22. And number 22 has never incarnated because number 22 doesn't think she's good enough to have a life. She's cynical. She was on that bus, cynical and snarky. What happens when we don't think we're good enough? We're going to see a path that is rocky. This was a trail that we took on the island of Hawaii between resorts, and it was just a mile. And you can't really tell, but there's quite a steep decline there. And I was wearing flip-flops. Not the wisest thing I ever did. But many of us are on a journey of thinking we're not good enough. And we are. And of course, another question that we all ask, probably most of us ask, is what happens next? What after this life? What if I don't answer my callings? What happens? Maybe it's just about the journey and not about getting somewhere. Maybe it's just about that spark. Maybe that's our destiny. The Revealing Word is one of Unity's metaphysical dictionaries, and it says this as destiny, definition of destiny, the goal toward which man's own thoughts are leading him. In the beginning, he was destined to bring forth God's perfect pattern, and he must eventually reach this supreme goal. Man's destiny is to go from glory to glory. Not just man's, women's and men's. From glory to glory, recognizing the divine unity among all of us. That's the glory. That it's about that pattern coming into full expression of the Christ that we are. And these girls and daughters of destiny battle this. They battle it, living in two different worlds. How challenging that must be for them. There's a story, if you were with us for a few years ago for our fall program, we did a book called The Great Work of Your Life. And in it, it follows the Bhagavad Gita and the story of Arjuna, who is a warrior. And he's cowering in the bottom of his chariot because he doesn't want to fight this war. And his charioteer is Krishna, God. And he's debating, why do I have to do this? Why is this my purpose? And I love this story. And when we were doing this, I didn't even think about the metaphysics of it in this way. That's what I love about metaphysical interpretation, that there's infinite numbers of ways of interpreting things. But in consciousness, we can feel like we're in battle, trying to overcome thoughts. He was supposed to fight his family. Don't we sometimes fight familiar thought patterns, like family? We're doing battle with these thought patterns. They're familiar to us. It doesn't mean that they should stick around. But they're part of us, and it's ours to overcome. Our destiny, I think, is to live a full, abundant life. In whatever form it takes for us. And many won't do this. Many will just stay at the bottom of the chariot. But what if you had? What if you really let Krishna, let God drive? Would that make a difference? Would you feel confident in doing what you came to do, being who you came to be, overcoming your fears? And I think Spirit is always inviting us to guidance, to let Spirit be the guide. Instead, many of us want to stay small, and we look at signs in the world. Here's a sign. Danger. Don't go that way. this was another holding. Beautiful scenery of the ocean and the rocks and the lava rocks in the ocean, but stay right. Don't want to get into any trouble. But each student at Shanti Bhavan has to overcome this and these fears and this feeling like they are not part of their family, really, the way their siblings are. They have to overcome patterns of belief. Not an easy thing to do. I think that's why Dr. George took them when they were 4 years old. Set those minds, those thought patterns young. But all of us are invited to raise ourselves up to a different level of thinking, knowing that we deserve joy, we deserve fulfillment, we deserve those sparks of life. You should expect to feel loved. You should expect to be seen and feel joy. And change those beliefs to know that. The girls, for the children, it took many people to lift them up. You think of a tree with its roots buried deep in the ground. Here's some trees in Hawaii where the roots are on the outside, lifting that one shoot up. Reminded me of all the people that touched the lives of each student at Shanti Bhavan and how many it took to hold them up, to lift them up, to let them reach new heights. Shilpa says at the end of this 4th episode, it's not about the beautiful setting or the buildings. It's not about the people who work here, not about one or all of you. But it is about all those combined and together what we can accomplish, how our lives have been transformed and how families are taken care of and what we will do for others. The ideals we've been taught of equality, truth, generosity, and compassion, and ultimately reverence for life make us destined to be different from the rest of our families and able to somehow shape our future. And with education, these children of Shanti Bhavan have been able to reshape their future, given an opportunity to free themselves from the thought patterns that kept them down, given the freedom to make different choices and find the sparks that give their life joy. It's my wish for you that you find that. Find those sparks that give your life joy.